The red sun of Nexus 7 was setting as Lieutenant Tahoe Kim moved through the tall grass. His black armor helped him blend with the growing shadows. He checked his scanner again. The Vrakian base was just 2 kilometers ahead. Tahoe touched the small device on his wrist. "Base, this is Ghost. I can see the target. Moving closer for better intel." "Copy that, Ghost. Be careful. Our scans show heavy activity in your sector." Captain Dong Yun's voice crackled through the comm. "Always am, sir," Tahoe replied with a small smile. He had done this many times before. Get in, gather information, get out. The Vrakians never knew he was there. That was why they called him Ghost back at base. But to enemies who had seen what he could do and lived to tell about it, he had another name: Baba Yaga. Tahoe moved forward, staying low. The Vrakian base loomed ahead, its metal walls gleaming in the dying light. Strange ships took off and landed at the far end. Tahoe counted them. More than usual. Something big was happening. He found a good spot behind a rock formation and set up his scanning equipment. The device began collecting data about ship movements, communications, and troop numbers. "This should keep the analysts busy," he muttered to himself. Then he heard it, a faint click behind him. Tahoe dropped flat just as energy bolts scorched the air where his head had been. His training kicked in instantly. Roll. Draw weapon. Return fire. Human detected. "Squad 6 has engaged the intruder," a harsh voice shouted in the Vrakian language. Tahoe cursed under his breath. They had improved their detection technology. He fired 3 quick shots, hitting 2 Vrakian soldiers. But more were coming. "Base, I've been spotted. Engaging hostiles," he reported calmly as he grabbed his scanning device and began moving toward the extraction point. "Copy that, Ghost. Can you make it to point Echo?" "Affirmative." More energy bolts flew past him. One grazed his shoulder, burning through his armor. Tahoe ignored the pain and kept running. The extraction point was 5 kilometers away, through rough terrain. He could make it. Then the ground in front of him erupted in fire and dirt. Tahoe was thrown backward. His ears rang. Pain shot through his leg. Looking down, he saw a piece of metal embedded in his thigh. Blood soaked his armor. "They'd brought artillery," he told base, his voice still steady despite the pain. Changing route. Tahoe limped toward an abandoned mining facility nearby. It wasn't ideal, but it offered cover. He could lose his pursuers in the maze of tunnels and rooms. The facility loomed ahead, a dark shadow against the darkening sky. Tahoe reached the entrance and slipped inside. The place was filled with old equipment and fallen support beams. He moved as quietly as his injured leg allowed, leaving small drops of blood on the dusty floor. Finding a defensible position, Tahoe readied his weapon and applied a quick seal to his leg wound. It would hold for now. He checked his ammunition. Not enough for a prolonged firefight. "Ghost to base. I'm holed up in the old mining facility in Sector 7. Multiple hostiles in pursuit, requesting immediate extraction." Static was his only answer. "Base, do you copy?" Nothing. The Vrakians were jamming his communications. Outside, he heard the heavy footsteps of Vrakian soldiers. They were surrounding the building. Tahoe checked his scanner. 20 soldiers at least, plus heavy weapons. "Not good odds," he whispered to himself. A deep voice boomed from outside. "Human soldier, we have you surrounded. Surrender now, and you will not be harmed." Tahoe almost laughed. The Vrakians weren't known for their kind treatment of prisoners. He took a deep breath and readied himself. If he was going down, he would take as many of them with him as possible. The doors and windows exploded inward as Vrakian soldiers poured in. Tahoe fired rapidly, dropping 3 before they could react. But there were too many. A stun blast hit him from behind, and darkness closed in. The last thing Tahoe saw was a tall Vrakian commander standing over him, yellow eyes gleaming with triumph. "Look at him," the commander said with a laugh. "So weak. So fragile, and humans think they can stand against the Confederacy. The other soldiers joined in the laughter, unaware of who they had just captured. They had no idea they had just caught Baba Yaga. Tahoe woke to pain. His body felt heavy, and his leg throbbed where the metal had pierced it. Slowly, he opened his eyes. He was in a small metal cell aboard what could only be a Vrakian battlecruiser. The engine's low hum told him they were in space. He tried to move, then realized his hands were bound with energy cuffs. The blue glow from the cuffs cast eerie shadows on the cell walls. His armor and equipment were gone, leaving him in just his black undersuit. The cell door slid open with a hiss. A tall Vrakian walked in, his gray skin looking almost metallic under the harsh lights. 4 red eyes stared down at Tahoe with obvious disgust. "The human is awake," the Vrakian called over his shoulder. "Commander Krell will be pleased." 2 more guards entered. One kicked Tahoe's wounded leg, making him wince despite his best efforts to hide his pain. "Not so tough now, are you?" The guard laughed. His voice sounded like stones grinding together. "Look at him. So small. So weak." The other guard joined in. "I don't see why the High Command is so worried about humans. They'd break so easily." They grabbed Tahoe by his arms and dragged him from the cell. His wounded leg left a trail of blood droplets on the shiny floor. Tahoe said nothing, but his eyes took in everything. He counted steps, noted doorways, observed guard patterns. Every detail might help him later. They brought him to a large room where the commander waited. Commander Krell was bigger than the other Vrakians, with deep scars crossing his face. 6 medals decorated his chest armor. "So this is the spy we caught." Krell circled Tahoe slowly. "You caused quite a bit of trouble. 6 of my soldiers dead." Tahoe remained silent, his face showing nothing. "What is your name, human?" Krell demanded. Tahoe met his gaze steadily. "Lieutenant Kim. Service number 7294TS. Krell laughed. "Very well, Lieutenant. You will tell us everything soon enough. What was your mission? How many human ships are in this sector?" "Lieutenant Kim. Service number 7294TS. Tahoe repeated. The commander's hand shot out, striking Tahoe across the face. Blood trickled from his split lip. "Your stubbornness is pointless," Krell said. "No one knows you are here. No one is coming for you." Meanwhile, aboard the human battleship Horizon, Captain Dong-Yun Park stood staring at the star map. A red dot showed the last known location of Lieutenant Kim. "Sir," Communications Officer Ju Li approached nervously. "We've lost contact with Ghost. His last transmission indicated he was surrounded. Should we send a rescue team?" Captain Dong-Hyun's face remained calm. "No, not yet. But sir, Lieutenant Kim might still be alive. We can't just abandon him." "Who said anything about abandoning him?" Dong-Hyun turned to face her. His eyes were hard but confident. "We wait." "Wait for what, sir?" "For them to realize their mistake." Dong-Hyun looked back at the map. "They don't know who they've captured." Ju-woo looked confused. "I don't understand." The captain smiled slightly. "Have you ever heard the other soldiers speak of Baba Yaga?" Back on the Vrakian ship, Tahoe was thrown into a new cell. This one was smaller, with bright lights that never turned off. His untreated leg wound had stopped bleeding but needed medical attention. A Vrakian in a medical uniform approached the cell. Unlike the others, he seemed more curious than hostile. "I am Medical Officer Sunho," he said. "I will examine your wound." As Sunho worked on his leg, Tahoe remained watchful. When the medical officer left, Tahoe had managed to palm a small surgical tool. Outside his cell, he could hear the guards talking. "Commander wants the human transferred to headquarters tomorrow," one said. "Good. I'm tired of babysitting this weakling," another replied. "What do humans call themselves?" "The most dangerous species in the galaxy." The guard laughed loudly. Tahoe closed his eyes, hiding a small smile. Let them laugh. Let them mock. Soon they would understand why some alien species whispered his codename with fear. Soon they would know they had not captured a simple soldier. They had captured Baba Yaga. "Tell me again about Taiho," young recruit Shuno asked as he sat in the mess hall of the human battleship Horizon. "Is he really as good as they say?" Sergeant Minji Kang looked up from her meal and smiled. She had served with Lieutenant Kim for 5 years now. "Better," she said simply. "Much better." "But why do they call him Baba Yaga? Isn't that some old earth monster?" Juno asked. Minji took a sip of her drink. "Let me tell you about the Centauri mission, then you'll understand. 3 years ago, the Vrakians had taken a human research station on Centauri 4. 50 scientists were held hostage. The station sat on a cliff overlooking a massive canyon. It was impossible to approach without being seen. It was my first mission with Taiho," Minji said. "We were told it was a suicide mission. The commander wanted to send in 30 soldiers. Taiho asked to go alone." "Alone? Against how many Vrakians?" Shunho's eyes were wide. 25 heavily armed soldiers," Minji replied. "I thought he was crazy, but the commander agreed." Taiho had disappeared into the night. Minji and the rescue team waited 10 kilometers away, ready to extract the hostages. They expected to wait days. They waited just 7 hours. Our comms crackled to life. It was Taiho. He said one word: "Coming." Minji paused, remembering. Then we saw them. 50 scientists walking through the darkness. All alive, all unharmed. Taiho was at the back, helping an old man who couldn't walk well. "What about the Vrakians?" Chunho asked. Minji's face grew serious. All 25 were neutralized. No alarms. No calls for help. One man did what 30 couldn't. "How?" Chunho whispered. I asked him the same thing. He said, "I didn't let them see me coming." In another part of the ship, Captain Dongyan sat with Communications Officer Juwu in his office. "I still don't understand why we're not rescuing Lieutenant Kim," Juwu said. Dongyan pulled up a file on his screen. "This is what happened on planet Keras when the Vrakians captured a Special Forces team." The screen showed a destroyed Vrakian prison. Bodies lay everywhere. One of the captured soldiers was Tao, Dongyan explained. The Vrakians didn't know who they had. By the time we arrived for rescue, he had already freed himself and the others. "But he's injured this time," Ju argued. Dongyan smiled slightly. "That just makes it fair for the Vrakians." Back on the Vrakian ship, Medical Officer Sunho was reviewing Taho's medical scan. Something bothered him about the human prisoner. "Computer, bring up known information on human special forces," he ordered. The screen filled with data. Sunho scrolled through it until something caught his eye. A warning about a specific human operative. The details were classified, but there was a name: Baba Yaga. The note explained that this was not the operative's real name, but a nickname given by alien forces who had encountered him and survived. It came from an old Earth legend about an unstoppable force, a Bujiman. "Computer, show me Lieutenant Kim's service record," Sunho requested. "Access denied. File classified," the computer responded. Sunho frowned. Why would a simple lieutenant have a classified file? In his cell, Taiho sat perfectly still. To the guards watching on cameras, he appeared to be sleeping or meditating. In reality, he was preparing his mind. He thought of the Morses 6 operation, where he had survived in a toxic swamp for 9 days with a broken arm and no supplies. He remembered the space station battle, where he had taken down 12 enemy fighters with just a handgun when his rifle jammed. Pain was temporary. Failure was not an option. His team counted on him. His people counted on him. The surgical tool he had stolen was now hidden in a small tear he had made in his undersuit. Not yet. The timing had to be perfect. Outside his cell, 2 guards laughed as they changed shifts. "The human hasn't moved in hours," one said. "Maybe he's given up." "Pathetic," the other replied. These humans think they're so special. Tahoe's eyes opened slightly. Soon they would learn. Soon they would understand the name Baba Yaga. He was not the boogeyman. He was the one you sent to kill the boogeyman. 2 Vrakian guards dragged Tahoe from his cell. His wounded leg left small drops of blood on the floor. They'd brought him to a large room with a single metal chair in the center. The walls were dark gray metal. It was cold. "Sit," one guard ordered, pushing Tahoe down. Metal restraints automatically closed around his wrists and ankles. The chair was bolted to the floor. A bright light shone directly into his face. Commander Krell entered the room, followed by 4 other Vrakians in officer uniforms. They stood in a half-circle in front of Tahoe. "Lieutenant Kim," Krell said, "I hope you slept well. Today we begin our real conversation." Tahoe said nothing. His eyes moved slowly around the room, noting the position of each guard, the location of the door controls, the weapons each Vrakian carried. Krell pressed a button on his wrist device. A holographic map appeared, showing a section of space with star systems and planets. "Your fleet is somewhere in this region," Krell said. "Tell us their exact position and strength." "Lieutenant Kim, service number 7294 TS. Tahoe replied calmly. One of the officers stepped forward and struck Tahoe across the face. His head snapped to the side. Blood trickled from his nose. "This can be easy or difficult," Krell continued. "The choice is yours." For the next 2 hours, they asked questions about the fleet, about Earth defenses, about human weapon technology. Tahoe only repeated his name and service number. The blows came regularly now. His face swelled. A cut opened above his eye. From a corner of the room, Medical Officer Sunho watched with growing concern, not because of the prisoner's treatment. Vrakians were not known for gentleness, but because of something else, something in the human's eyes. There was no fear there, no panic, just calm, patient observation, like a predator studying its prey. When Commander Krell called for a break, Sunho approached him in the corridor outside. "Commander, may I speak freely?" Sunho asked. "What is it, Medical Officer?" Krell sounded irritated. "I believe this prisoner may be more dangerous than we think," Sunho said carefully. Krell laughed. "Look at him. Bloody. Beaten. How is he dangerous?" "I've researched human special forces," Sunho continued. "There are rumors of an operative they call Baba Yaga, a human with unusual skills, a human who has escaped capture multiple times." "Fairy tales to scare young soldiers," Krell dismissed with a wave. "All species have such myths." "Sir, I request permission to run a full genetic scan on the prisoner," Sunho pressed. "There's something unusual about him." "Fine. Do your scan. But be quick. We resume in 30 minutes. In the interrogation room, 2 guards stayed with Tahoe. They stood near the door, talking quietly. "How much do you think he can take?" one asked. "Not much more," the other replied with a laugh. "Humans break easily. Their bones are like twigs. I bet you a week's rations he cries before the day ends," the first guard said. "Make it 2 weeks, and I bet he begs for mercy within the hour." They laughed together, occasionally glancing at Tahoe. He sat still, his head lowered, appearing defeated. They didn't notice his fingers working slowly at the edge of his restraints. They didn't see him testing their strength. They didn't realize he was memorizing the guards' shift changes, the ship's announcement patterns, the subtle vibrations that indicated when they passed near the engine room. Medical Officer Sunho ran the genetic scan quickly. The results made him freeze. Enhanced muscle density, modified pain receptors, accelerated healing capabilities. This was no ordinary human. Sunho hurried back toward the interrogation room. He had to warn Commander Krell, but as he rounded a corner, he almost collided with Guard Supervisor Woojin. "The prisoner is ready for the next session," Woojin said. "Wait," Sunho began. "I need to speak with the commander first." "The human." "The commander is already there," Wujin interrupted. "You can tell him your medical concerns after. Though I don't see why you care about a human's comfort." As Sun Ho hurried to the interrogation room, he couldn't shake a strange feeling. The calm in the human's eyes, the way he observed everything. It wasn't the look of a man being broken. It was the look of a man making plans. Back in his cell, Taiho sat on the cold metal floor. His face was bruised and swollen from the interrogation. Blood had dried on his chin. To anyone watching, he looked defeated and weak. They were wrong. When the guards weren't looking, Taiho had collected small things: the thin metal strip from the floor, a tiny spring from inside his chair restraint, the surgical tool from Medical Officer Sun Ho. None of these items seemed important alone. Together, they were weapons. Taiho carefully wrapped a strip of cloth torn from his undersuit around his wounded leg. The cut was deep, but he had felt worse pain. Much worse. He heard footsteps approaching. Quickly, he hid his collected items in a small tear in his mattress. The cell door slid open. Guard Supervisor Wujin entered, carrying a tray of food. It was gray mush that smelled like old engine oil. "Dinner time, human," Wujin said with a laugh. "Enjoy our finest cuisine." He placed the tray on the floor and kicked it toward Taiho. Half the food spilled out. "Oops," Wujin said. "Clumsy me." Taiho didn't move. His eyes stayed on the floor, like a broken man. "What's wrong?" "Not hungry." Wujin stepped closer. "The mighty human soldier can't even eat now." The other guards had left. Wujin was alone. The security camera in the corner of the cell had a blind spot just where Taiho sat. It was time. "I said eat, human." Wujin reached down to grab Taiho. In one fluid motion, Taiho struck. The small surgical tool pierced the thin area between the plates of Wujin's armor, right at the neck. The Vrakian gasped in surprise. Before he could shout, Taiho was on his feet, one hand clamped over Wujin's mouth. They struggled for just a few seconds before Wujin went limp. Taiho lowered the body to the floor silently. The guard wasn't dead, just unconscious. Working quickly, Taiho removed Wujin's armor. It was too big for him, but that didn't matter. He only needed certain parts: the communication device on the wrist, the access card, the small stun weapon. He dragged Wujin to the bed and covered him with a thin blanket. From a distance, it might look like Taiho was sleeping there. Using the access card, Taiho unlocked the cell door. The corridor outside was empty. He checked the time on Wujin's device. Shift change was happening in the main security section. Perfect. Taiho slipped into the maintenance tunnel next to his cell. These tunnels ran throughout the ship, used by repair droids and engineers. Most soldiers never entered them. The tunnel was narrow and dark. Taiho crawled forward, ignoring the pain in his leg. He had studied the ship's layout during his time in captivity. Every announcement, every guard's comment, every vibration told him something about where things were located. After 20 minutes of crawling, he reached a small junction box. Using the metal strip he had collected, he pried it open. Inside were wires and controls for this section's security systems. With careful precision, Taiho rewired the junction box. The security cameras in the prison section would now show a loop of empty corridors. The alarm system was disabled in that area. No one would know he was gone until someone physically checked his cell. In the command center of the ship, a young Vrakian technician frowned at his screen. "That's strange," he said to himself. The security feed from the prison section flickered for a moment, then returned to normal. Everything looked fine. He shrugged and turned his attention to other matters. Probably just a power fluctuation. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in every corridor. "All personnel to battle stations." Commander Krell's voice boomed over the communication system. "Enemy ships detected at long range." This is not a drill. In the confusion of battle stations, no one thought to check on the human prisoner. After all, he was securely locked in his cell, weak and beaten. How dangerous could one injured human be? Tahoe smiled in the darkness of the maintenance tunnel. The timing couldn't be better. While the crew was distracted by the distant ships, he would make his next move. Baba Yaga was hunting. Security Chief Jimin Yoon stared at the screen in confusion. Section 4, where the prison cells were located, showed all systems normal, but something felt wrong. "Run a manual check on the prisoner," she ordered a nearby guard. "I want visual confirmation." The guard looked annoyed. "But Chief, we're at battle stations. The human isn't going anywhere." "That's an order," Jimin said sharply. As the guard left, Jimin turned to her second-in-command. "Check all maintenance access points near the prison section. Something doesn't feel right." 5 minutes later, the alarm sounded. A real one this time, not the battle drill. "Prisoner escape. The human is gone." The panicked voice of the guard came through the comm system. "Supervisor Woojin is unconscious." Commander Krell's angry voice boomed over the system. "Find him. Lock down all sections. I want that human found now." Jimin moved quickly, organizing search teams. But a cold feeling was growing in her stomach. This wasn't a normal escape attempt. Tahoe moved silently through the maintenance shafts. He could hear the chaos above him. They knew he was gone now. Good. Let them panic. The next part of his plan required access to a computer terminal. He needed to learn why this ship was here, what their mission was. Information was as important as escape. Tahoe reached a junction where the maintenance shaft opened into a small control room. 2 Vrakian technicians worked at the consoles, frantically responding to alerts. "All sections report in," one was saying. "The human can't have gone far." Tahoe waited for the perfect moment. When one technician left to check an adjacent room, he made his move. The remaining technician never saw what hit him. Tahoe struck silently, using the stun weapon to render him unconscious. Dragging the body under the console, Tahoe took his place at the computer. His fingers flew over the controls. The Vrakian language was complex, but Tahoe had studied it extensively. Within moments, he was accessing the ship's mission files. What he found made his blood run cold. The ship carried details of a planned attack on New Eden, a human colony with 8 million people. The attack would come in just 3 days. Suddenly, alarms blared in the control room. Someone had noticed the unconscious technician. "Security breach in Control Room 7. A voice shouted over the comm system. Tahoe grabbed a data chip from the console, copying the attack plans. Then he slipped back into the maintenance shaft just as boots thundered down the corridor. He was right here. A security officer shouted. The human was using our own systems. Jimin Yoon arrived at Control Room 7, her face dark with concern. She examined the console the human had used. "Check the access logs," she ordered. "Find out what he was looking at." A moment later, her worst fears were confirmed. He accessed the attack plans for New Eden. Jimin turned to her communication officer. "Get me Commander Krell immediately." When Krell's face appeared on the screen, Jimin spoke urgently. "Sir, I believe we are not dealing with an ordinary human prisoner." "What are you talking about?" Krell demanded. "The skill, the planning, the precision of this escape." Jimin hesitated. "Sir, I think we may have captured Baba Yaga." Krell's 4 eyes widened. Even he had heard that name. "Impossible. Baba Yaga is a myth." "Sir, with respect, the myths may be based on truth. This human moves like a ghost. He's injured, outnumbered, and yet he's evading our best security. He now has information about the New Eden attack." Commander Krell was silent for a moment. Then his face hardened. "Lock down all escape pods. Seal all shuttle bays. Divert all guards to search the ship section by section. No one sleeps until this human is found." In the darkness of a storage compartment, Tahoe heard the announcement. Every guard was looking for him now. The ship was on complete lockdown. He smiled slightly. They were finally taking him seriously. But it was too late. Tahoe checked the stun weapon he had taken. The charge was low. He had Wujin's knife and access card. Not much to work with, but enough. He thought about the 8 million people on New Eden. They had no idea what was coming. He had to get this information to the human fleet. What had started as a simple escape had become a mission. Time to move to the next phase of his plan. The hunter was becoming the hunted. But Tahoe knew something the Vrakians did not. Baba Yaga worked best when cornered. Commander Krell stood on the bridge of his battlecruiser, his 4 eyes narrowed in anger. The situation had spiraled out of control. What should have been a simple prisoner transport had turned into a nightmare. "Status report," he demanded. Security Chief Jimin approached, her posture tense. 3 more guards found unconscious in Section 6. Engineering reports someone has tampered with the secondary power systems. Communications in the lower decks are offline. How is this possible? Krell slammed his fist on a console. He's one human, injured and unarmed. Medical Officer Sunho stepped forward hesitantly. "Sir, I've completed my analysis of the prisoner's genetic scan. This is hardly the time," Krell began. "Sir, you need to see this," Sunho interrupted. An unusual act for a Vrakian of lower rank. He displayed a holographic image showing human DNA, with certain sections highlighted in red. This human has been extensively modified. Enhanced strength, reduced pain sensitivity, accelerated healing, and more. Krell stared at the display. "Are you saying he's not human?" "He is human, but improved," Sunho explained. "This matches the rumors about human special operatives. The ones they call ghosts. Or Baba Yaga," Jimin added quietly. The bridge fell silent. Even the most hardened Vrakian warriors knew that name. A human who could not be stopped. A human who, once he targeted you, would never give up. "Send all available troops to the bridge and engine room," Krell ordered after a moment. "He'll try to disable the ship or send a message to his fleet." "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we're detecting an encrypted transmission. It's coming from within our ship." In a small communications room deep in the ship, Tahoe finished sending his message. It was brief. "Package secure. Cleaning house." Captain Donghyun would understand. The package was the intelligence about the planned attack on New Eden. Cleaning house meant Tahoe was eliminating the threat. He could hear boots thundering down the corridor. Guards were coming. Tahoe moved to the door and waited. On the human battleship horizon, Captain Donghyun smiled as the encrypted message appeared on his screen. "Is that from Lieutenant Kim?" Communications Officer Ju asked in disbelief. "It is," Donghyun confirmed. "He's alive and has critical intelligence." "How do we extract him?" Ju asked. Donghyun turned to Sergeant Minji, who had just entered the bridge. "Prepare a rescue team. We leave in 30 minutes. Minji nodded eagerly. "I'll lead it." "Sir." "The Vrakian ship is heavily armed," Ju warned. "It's too dangerous." "The danger isn't for us," Donghyun said calmly. "It's for any Vrakian who gets between Tahoe and his extraction point." Back on the Vrakian ship, chaos was spreading. Sections of the vessel were losing power. Communication systems failed at random. Security cameras showed empty corridors. Then a shadow would pass, and guards would be found unconscious. In the ship's data center, Tahoe worked quickly. Here was the brain of the battlecruiser, containing all its operational files. And here was where he would complete his mission. First, he downloaded the complete attack plans for New Eden. The information would save millions of lives. Then he began planting small explosive devices he had created from items found throughout the ship. Nothing large enough to destroy the vessel, but sufficient to disable key systems. The door to the data center slid open. Commander Krell entered, flanked by 6 elite guards. All had weapons aimed at Tahoe. "Enough," Krell said. "This ends now." Tahoe slowly turned to face them. For the first time, he smiled. The guards took an involuntary step back. There was something terrifying in that smile. "You're right," Tahoe said, speaking for the first time since his capture. This does end now. Krell's eyes narrowed. You are surrounded, injured, and outnumbered. Surrender. Surrounded? Yes. Injured? Yes, Tahoe agreed. He took a step forward. The guards tightened their grips on their weapons. But there's something you should understand about humans, Commander, Tahoe continued. We're not dangerous because we're strong. We're dangerous because we never give up. Krell raised his weapon. Last chance, human. My name is Lieutenant Tahoe Kim, he said calmly. But your soldiers who survived past encounters with humans might know me by another name. A flicker of understanding crossed Krell's face, followed by the first traces of fear. Baba Yaga, Tahoe confirmed. Then he pressed a button on the console behind him. The lights went out, plunging the data center into darkness. In the darkness of the data center, chaos erupted. Blaster fire lit up the room in brief red flashes. Vrakian soldiers shouted in confusion. Bodies collided. Find him. Commander Krell roared. Don't let him escape. But Tahoe was already moving. In the dark, he had the advantage. Humans could adapt to low light better than Vrakians, and Tahoe had been specially trained for operations in darkness. A guard fired blindly, the shot hitting another Vrakian. More shouting followed. Tahoe moved silently between them, like a ghost. The emergency lights came on, casting a dim red glow over the room. 3 guards were down. Tahoe was nowhere to be seen. Where is he? Krell spun around, weapon raised. Behind you, came a quiet voice. Krell turned just in time to see Tahoe swing down from an overhead pipe. The commander fired, but too late. Tahoe's boot connected with his chest, sending him crashing into a console. The remaining guards opened fire. Tahoe rolled behind a server bank. The shots hit the sensitive equipment, causing sparks and small explosions. Stop firing, you fools, Krell shouted. You'll destroy the data center. In that moment of hesitation, Tahoe struck again. He threw a small device he had made from parts collected throughout the ship. It exploded in a bright flash, temporarily blinding the Vrakians. When they could see again, 2 more guards were unconscious. Only Krell and 1 guard remained standing. What are you? The last guard whispered in fear. Tahoe stood before them now, his face calm despite his wounds and the blood on his clothes. In one hand, he held the guard's own weapon, taken during the confusion. I told you, Tahoe said. I'm human. Just human. The guard fired in panic. Tahoe dodged with impossible speed, the shot barely missing him. Before the guard could fire again, Tahoe's stolen weapon flashed. The guard dropped. Now only Commander Krell remained. He backed up against the main computer terminal, his weapon aimed at Tahoe's heart. Stay back, Krell ordered. I'll kill you where you stand. No, you won't, Tahoe said calmly. Your weapon's charge is depleted. You fired 11 shots. That model only holds 10. The 11th was the emergency charge. Krell pulled the trigger anyway. Nothing happened. How? Krell began, true fear in his voice for the first time. I counted. Tahoe said simply. Humans are good at details. Krell drew a blade from his belt. Then I'll gut you myself. The commander lunged forward, slashing with skill. Tahoe moved just enough to avoid the blade. Despite his injuries, he was faster than Krell expected. 8 million civilians, Tahoe said as he dodged another attack. That's how many people live on New Eden. That's how many you plan to kill. They are enemies of the Confederacy, Krell shouted, swinging again. They are farmers, teachers, children, Tahoe replied. This time, he didn't dodge. He caught Krell's wrist, stopping the blade centimeters from his face. Krell stared in shock. The human's grip was like iron. Impossible, Krell whispered. You're injured, weakened. Pain is temporary, Tahoe said. Will is everything. With a quick twist, he disarmed Krell and knocked him to the floor. The commander lay stunned, looking up at his former prisoner. The ship's alarms blared. A computerized voice announced, "Critical system failure. All personnel evacuate. Self-destruct sequence initiated." "What have you done?" Krell demanded. "I set the ship to destroy itself," Tahoe explained, "but only after sending a warning to New Eden and giving the crew time to evacuate. I'm not like you. I don't target civilians." The door to the data center slid open. Medical Officer Sunho stood there, looking between Tahoe and the fallen commander. "The medical bay needs help evacuating patients," Sunho said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Tahoe nodded. "I'll spare your medical personnel if you help me reach an escape pod." "Why should I help you?" Sunho asked. "Because unlike your commander, you understand what mercy is," Tahoe replied. After a moment, Sunho nodded. "This way. Quickly." As they left, Krell called out, "This isn't over, Baba Yaga." Tahoe paused at the door. "For you, Commander, it is." Sergeant Minji Kang stood on the bridge of the rescue ship, watching the Vrakian battlecruiser through the main view screen. The massive enemy vessel was showing signs of damage. Power fluctuations rippled across its hull. Escape pods launched from various sections. "Status report," Minji ordered. "We're detecting multiple life pod launches," the sensor officer replied. "The Vrakian ship appears to be in serious trouble." Minji allowed herself a small smile. "Any sign of Lieutenant Kim?" "Nothing yet, Sergeant." The communications officer suddenly straightened in his seat. "Incoming transmission. It's on our secure frequency." Minji moved quickly to the communication station. "Put it through." A voice crackled over the speaker. "Extraction team, this is Ghost. I need pickup coordinates." "Tahoe." Minji couldn't hide her relief. "What's your status?" "I have the package and am heading to an escape pod now," Tahoe replied calmly, as if he were reporting on a routine mission. Section 12, Bay 4. "On our way," Minji confirmed. "Extraction in 10 minutes." As the rescue ship changed course, Minji watched more escape pods launching from the Vrakian vessel. "What happened in there, Tahoe?" There was a pause before he responded. "I reminded them why they should fear the dark." Medical Officer Sunho led Tahoe through the chaotic corridors of the dying ship. Crew members ran in all directions, trying to reach escape pods. None paid attention to the human following the medical officer. "This way," Sunho said, pointing to a small hallway. "These pods are for medical evacuations. They have better supplies." The escape pod bay was empty except for 2 medical assistants loading supplies. "Dr. Sunho," one called out, "we saved a pod for you." Sunho nodded. "Thank you. Is it ready?" "Yes, sir. It can launch immediately." Sunho turned to Tahoe. "This pod will take you clear of the ship before it explodes. It has medical supplies for your wounds." Tahoe studied the Vrakian doctor. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I am a doctor first, a Vrakian second," Sunho replied. "And because I saw how you spared our medical staff. You could have killed everyone, but you didn't." Tahoe nodded. "War makes monsters of us all if we let it. Thank you." As Tahoe entered the pod, Sunho asked, "Is it true what they say? Are you really Baba Yaga?" Tahoe paused. "I'm just a soldier doing my job. The name means nothing." "Perhaps," Sunho said, "but after today, the legend will grow." From the bridge of his small evacuation shuttle, Commander Krell watched his mighty battlecruiser fall apart. His 4 eyes were filled with rage and disbelief. How could one human do this? His second-in-command asked in a whisper. Before Krell could answer, a small medical escape pod launched from the side of the dying ship. Somehow, Krell knew who was inside. "Should we pursue, Commander?" a weapons officer asked. Krell was about to order an attack when a new vessel appeared on their sensors, a human military ship, moving fast toward the escape pod. "No," Krell said after a moment. "We retreat and report to High Command. They must know what we face." As they turned away, Krell vowed silently that this was not over. The rescue ship's medical bay was bright and clean. Tahoe lay on a bed as doctors treated his wounds. Minji stood nearby, watching with concern. "You look terrible," she said with a small smile. "You should see the other guys," Tahoe replied. Captain Dong-Yun entered the medical bay, walking straight to Tahoe's bed. "The data you retrieved is invaluable, Lieutenant. New Eden has been warned. Our fleet is moving to intercept the Vrakian attack force." "Just doing my job, sir," Tahoe said. "The Vrakians will think twice before laughing at a wounded human again," Dong-Yun noted. Later, as Tahoe rested, Minji sat beside his bed. "The crew is already telling stories about how you turned a Vrakian battlecruiser into your personal hunting ground." Tahoe closed his eyes. "People need heroes, Minji. They need stories." "And what do you need?" she asked. He thought for a moment. "Peace. But until then, I'll do what I must." On distant Vrakian worlds, the story spread of the human they had captured and mocked. The human who had single-handedly defeated an entire battlecruiser. The human they now knew to fear. Baba Yaga. Not a monster from children's tales, but something far more dangerous. The human who refused to give up, no matter the odds. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, Commander Krell began planning his revenge, unaware that the legend he helped create was watching and waiting. The hunter had become the hunted, and the legend continued to grow.